delivering your midweek edition of CNN 10. Thank you for watching. While so much international attention is focused right now on what's happening in Ukraine, some experts on international affairs are focused on what could happen in Taiwan. This is an island that's a little bigger than the U.S. state of Maryland. It's located about 100 miles southeast of mainland China, and Taiwan and China have a very sensitive relationship. China's communist government considers the island to be a part of China. It has since the 1940s, when the Communist Party won a civil war and forced the nation's previous government to flee to Taiwan. Since then, every communist leader of the mainland has promised to take control of the island. But Taiwan has its own government, a democracy, and wants to keep things as they are, so their dispute is not new. What is are concerns that China may be looking at Russia's invasion of Ukraine and the international response to it, and considering doing something similar in Taiwan. To be clear, we don't know if that's going to happen. The U.S. supports Taiwan like it does Ukraine. It's sent weapons to the island like it has to Ukraine. And America wants to limit China's influence in Asia like it wants to limit Russia's influence in Eastern Europe. But if the international sanctions on Russia are not enough to stop its invasion of Ukraine, would a similar policy toward China be enough to prevent it from targeting Taiwan?
Kyiv and Taipei, two capitals, half a world apart. One under siege, the other on edge. I worry this may happen to Taiwan, he says. These two work at a small vegetable stand. If war breaks out, it's bad for both sides, she says. It will be a tragedy. Russian President Vladimir Putin's attack on Ukraine, raising questions about the future of Taiwan, a self-governing democracy claimed but never controlled by Beijing's communist rulers. Taiwan's leaders say Ukraine could be a blueprint for Beijing to, quote, reunify by force if necessary.
And the danger will be that the Chinese leaders think that the Western reaction to the Russian aggression is weak.
Taiwan's military is on high alert. The island's reserve forces are doubling down on combat training, just in case China decides to make good on its threats. Chinese President Xi Jinping's first face-to-face meeting with a foreign leader since COVID? President Putin in Beijing, bolstering their authoritarian partnership. China still refuses to call the crisis in Ukraine an invasion.
There is a possibility, however slim, that autocratic regimes could decide for their own calculations, their own reasons, to use force against a democratic country.
China does not consider Taiwan a country. They call it an inalienable part of Chinese territory. On Monday, China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi shot down comparisons of Taiwan and Ukraine, calling Taiwan independence a dead end, a scheme to contain China by external forces like the U.S. There are important differences between Ukraine and Taiwan. First of all, Taiwan's an island, so it's much harder to invade. Plus, regional allies like Japan have already signaled that they would come to the island's defense if China invaded, the U.S. keeping its policy of strategic ambiguity. But Taiwan is of critical importance to the U.S. because of its location on the first island chain, sitting right there in the middle, strategically protecting the United States from a potential Chinese invasion. Taiwan also a global leader in semiconductors that power pretty much every device in our lives. And, of course, those same things also make Taiwan very attractive to China. All eyes now on this partnership between China and Russia to see what develops in the coming weeks. Will Ripley, CNN, Taipei.
There's already a global shortage of semiconductors, aka computer chips. The reasons for that include shutdowns related to COVID, soaring demand for electronics that use semiconductors, and trade restrictions between the US and China. Now, some U.S. car makers are delivering vehicles without certain features because they don't have enough chips to fully finish them. For instance, people in the back seats of new Ford Explorers won't have air and heat adjustments. Their temperature will be controlled from the front of the car. Last year, General Motors stopped including heated seats and parking help features on some models, as well as systems that help improve gas mileage because of the chip shortage. But the companies say they can add many of these features to customers' cars later on at no charge when chips become available. Despite this issue, car prices are at record highs. 10-second trivia. What is meant by the term plein air? Taking a walk, painting outdoors, open cockpit flying, or leaving untreated? When it comes to art, plein air painting is completed outside. It's a popular and classic method of producing landscapes, though some artists prefer to photograph the great outdoors and then paint them later in their studios. There are three main types of landscape art. Representational, which aims to be more realistic. There's impressionistic art, which is less detailed and more painterly. And there's abstract, which sets free the artist's imagination. Today's feature centers on the work of an impressionistic modern artist.
I always think that being a landscape painter, you need to be greedy about space. I always like to include more and more. In a landscape, actually, the sky is a very important element to manipulate the whole feelings of the scenery. The colors of the sky and also the clouds, what forms they are on that day. But at the same time, they are changing very quickly. Comparatively, the trees and also the mountains, they are quite stable, but they are influenced by the light and shadow. All these impressions affect how I paint. The Macarthur Trail is a very iconic trail in Hong Kong. When you hike from Sai Kung to the Tuen Mun area, you come across to so many famous mountains, beaches to the very famous reservoir with 1,000 islands. During the hike, the whole space is really big, and also I come across to so many different things. When you sketch and you draw, you really have to choose what really interests you or what you think is important. This makes it quite different from taking photographs. After coming back to the studio, I will try to recompose what I have experienced in the trail. I combine the sketches, my memory of hiking. I use imagination to fill in the blank area. For me, it's just like playing Lego. You build up the landscape by composition, lines and colors. That's why on the canvas, you can recognize some very iconic scenery, but at the same time, you can't see it in the real nature. I always interested in how I interpret the nature rather than the accuracy of capturing the scenery.
Fun facts. Two other terms for a wolverine are carcajou and skunk bear. I learn a lot in this job. Today I also learned that this is the first wolverine ever captured in the state of Utah. They're usually found farther north. Wildlife experts trapped him over the past week. He had been preying on a herd of sheep. They estimate he's around 4 years old, 28 pounds, and 4 feet long. He was sedated, examined, and collared so officials can track where he goes. It's not unusual for wolverines to forge their own paths. They're rogues that can mimic other predators and wreaking havoc through the ice, man. Of course, the shepherd hopes officials Volcan sway that Magneto creature to follow the North Star to a different sunspot beneath the aurora, even if that's a long shot. I'm Carl Azus, and we're getting comical on CNN 10. Methuen High School, it is great to have you watching from Methuen, Massachusetts.